We're here tonight to talk about some projects we have going on at the university, specifically some projects that abut the Rogers Forge neighborhood. But before we get into that, just to give you a brief overview of what we're doing on campus. Anyone who's driven up York Road recently has seen the tower cranes right next to the 7800 building in Stevens Hall. And one thing I can assure you is we're not going to construct in front of Stevens Hall. We had some folks saying, what's going on in front of Stevens Hall? Are you putting a building in front of that, the beautiful, iconic building that you have on campus? Well, no, that's just construction staging there where the construction trailers are. The big hole in the ground is basically where the building's going to go. And that's a science building. That science building is going to be 316,000 square feet. It's going to be a relatively large building. We're trying to sink it in and then marry it up to the Glen as best we can. That building will serve for our workforce development STEM programs that we have on campus. So you'll start to see it kind of coming out of the ground here probably in the next couple months. We hope to have the building complete by fall of 2020 and start classes in there. Currently, the science students are in Smith Hall, which was built back in 1964. Anyone go to Towson here? So remember Smith Hall? Yeah. So this building will be nothing like it when we get done with it, hopefully. So yeah.
Like how high? How many floors above ground level?
It's going to be 5 stories high. So one of the things when we were siting the building we were paying particular attention to is we didn't want it to be higher than Stevens Hall, because that is our iconic building, and we tried to keep that building off of York Road as much as we can to kind of give it an easement. And then also, so you're driving north on York Road, you'll get those views of Stevens that you see as you're kind of going up. So that project's underway, and then this fall we're going to be starting an expansion to our University Union. The University Union is basically almost right in the middle of campus, right next to the turf fields, the recreation turf fields off of Osler. That project will be probably about a 3-year project. By 2021, we hope to have the addition and the renovation to that building complete. And again, that was another legacy building that was built in the 70s, when the institution was a completely different institution. So this will hopefully meet the needs of our current students. So the projects that I want to talk about today, one is a field hockey field. So currently our women's field hockey team is they're the only one basically in our association that doesn't have a permanent field. And the reason they don't have a permanent field is because they play on a very special turf. It's almost like the old-fashioned AstroTurf, if you remember that. Our stadium years ago went to a field turf because it was proven better for football injuries and lacrosse injuries. And so they've played on that type of surface. They've played on the grass surface, which is right where this field is. If you look at that diagram, you can see where the little wore-out areas were in front of the little nets that they played on. They played on that for a while. We had a difficult time keeping that turf ready and in good field playing condition and meeting the NCAA requirements. So this is part of a broader effort at the university to address women's sports and equity on the campus. There's a thing out there that we all go by as Title IX, and we're trying to make sure that we stay compliant with NCAA regulations. So what we're proposing to do on this field is to basically turf it. And it will be kind of the old AstroTurf. It's a really short rug. And anyone's ever seen field hockey, they want that kind of short rug so they can hit the ball and it goes far. It doesn't go quite as far on the field turf, which is a thicker kind of surface. So what we're proposing to do is to take that practice field, that playing field that they've used, and just basically put turf down on it. You'll see on that overhead, there are some existing bleachers. They're kind of sitting right there off to probably to the top of your, make sure if I have the orientation right, yeah. Basically, you'll see the bleachers kind of like next to the access road. Those are existing bleachers that are there. We're planning to keep those there as well, just kind of retain those. The budget for the project's about $3 million. We had proposed this project a while back in 2007, but we didn't have the money to do it. Our president basically said this is something that has to be a priority. We have to address this issue with women's sports. So we're going to proceed with the turfing of the field right now. And so that will bring us into compliance with NCAA regulations. We don't anticipate much more improvements to that area. There's a scoreboard there existing that they had used in the past. It will probably remain. They may upgrade it. I don't know. There will be kind of a small press box, which is like a little modular 8x8 little box that will be placed on the field for them to record the games and so forth. But as far as expansion of the stands, right now we don't think we have the need to do that for the visitors who come to watch the field hockey. We average about 60 people, 60 to 70 people per field hockey game. There are 16 games in the season, and they play basically in the fall. So if they needed more stands, we can bring some temporary ones in there and set them. But at this point, we don't anticipate a need for that. So basically, the field turf itself is estimated to cost us somewhere around $2 million, $2.2 million by the time we do all the field improvements. We have to level off the field, put the drainage systems in, and then place the field turf on top. We have a rock allowance in there. We have about $200,000 some contingency, so we're almost right up against our budget of $3 million for that project. The other project, Katie has another handout, and this is the lower fields, and we're looking to do something similar for those as well. These are practice fields that we have. One is a competition soccer field that women's soccer uses, and the field has some issues with it. It's a natural surface right now. We have issues trying to maintain that surface and replacing the grass. So what we're proposing to do there is a similar thing. We're going to basically turf that field as well, and have a good playing surface for women's soccer. And then the lower part of the field is basically used for other practices, for lacrosse practices, for football practices, and essentially we're going to turf those fields as well. That project will start most likely this fall. The first phase of that project is basically replacing a county storm drain. There's a big 6-foot storm drain that runs right down through there, and it's about 60 years old. So before we put any kind of improvements on top of that, we're going to go through and replace that county storm drain. That's going to start in November, and then we would anticipate starting those lower fields sometime in the springtime, probably around May. And they'll be ready for August. The field hockey field, we're hoping to start it sometime this summer. We don't have the schedule completely finalized yet. The project is going through procurement right now, so we hope to have it, bid out, competitively bid out, and then a contract sometime early this summer. And we're trying to get it ready for the start of the field hockey season, but we might miss it by a few weeks. So it might be September, by the time it's finally completed. We're trying to get it done for August, so they can start and have their games and play there in the fall. Those are the basic two projects that we have that would, that would impact, the surrounding area. The two field improvement projects. So, are there any questions on either one of those? Yes.
Yes. Are there going to be any lighting added to the field?
No.
Okay, good.
No, not the field hockey field, which is right up against the community association.
Right.
Jerry remembers when we did softball, there was talk of lighting at that point, and our president at the time made a commitment that we were not going to put it in. As a matter of fact, we didn't put the conduit in, when we did that project. So I can say at this time, we have no plans to put lighting, and there's no plans that I'm aware of to put lighting on the field.
I'm right at ground zero as well, so.
Yeah. And I know that that's a sensitive issue.
Yeah.
Being right
It
next.
is.
Yes.
Sound?
Yeah, there will be sound. It'll most likely be we don't know what kind of sound it will be. Most likely a portable system that they'll use when they have their games. But again, we'll abide to the Baltimore County noise ordinance. What that says. I know we've had some back and forth on softball and trying to make sure that was right. I understand it was a little loud at the beginning, or we worked to kind of make sure that system is at the level that it's supposed to be at. So.
Are there any decibel levels on that sound?
I think softball is 65. Jerry may know exactly what that is, what the county says.
We had 55 at one time, and then you guys changed to Comar, which is 70 during daylight hours.
Okay,
And last fall, we were exceeding the 70, but then we calibrated this spring, and mostly you were in the 60 to 65 level.
yeah,
Are you saying the Maryland State,
The regulation, the Maryland State
is
regulation.
70?
Is 70, yes.
The whole entire state, that's under Comar,
That's daylight hours, 70.
until 8 o'clock.
I think it's 10 o'clock.
I'm not sure what COMAR specifies exactly.
I
It's
believe
usually
it,
8 o'clock, unless it's changed on me, I don't know.
so I know after 10 o'clock in the evening, it goes down to 55.
10 o'clock.
Yes.
10 o'clock.
There may be something in between, I'll
That's-
check. and
that's
see.
Comar, right?
That's Comar, correct.
There's no lights planned for either of these.
yeah, right now, the first phase of the lower fields, will not have lights. It may have lights in the future, the lower bowl part.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah.
Would the university consider entering into a written agreement, portable, enforceable by the community as to no lighting on these fields, particularly the one that abuts Stanley Ford?
Yeah, that's something out of my ability to sign off on.
Can you take it back to whoever you
Please.
have to get approval from?
Yeah,
I-
let's get Katie on camera.
Yeah,
after that.
I'll introduce myself. I'm Katie Maloney. I handle government and community relations for the president's office. And in terms of the lighting, again, we don't have plans to do it on the upper field. The lower field, we don't have the budget for it in the first phase of that. Yet to be determined if we end up doing a second phase, that's gonna be determined by a financial decision. So I can
My
take that
concern
back to the
is
president, but.
This is what you're planning right now.
Mhm.
And you may not have the budget for lighting right now, but if you get the budget next year, I don't wanna be faced with a fait accompli, the lighting system.
Yeah.
So,
Right. I think that it's more likely that we would be looking at the lower fields to light. They're gonna be utilized much more often than the field hockey field will be. And it's a larger area, so we will have multiple events or multiple, athletic practices going on at the same time. Plus, we understand that that lower field, being as low as it is, would be less impactful to our neighbors if we had lighting on that
how
lower field.
about the field hockey field?
That, as far as I know, is simply the laying of the turf. We don't have any plans right now to do lighting, and I don't think we anticipate entering into any more phases.
Can you take it back to whoever is the decision maker to ask them if they will enter into a written agreement with the community, portable, enforceable by the community, as to no lights on field hockey fields?
I can take that back to the president and ask her if she's interested in doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that, you know, I've seen the, you know, preliminary design drawings, and, you know, I can say unequivocally, we do not have any conduit right now that we would put in to do that for those fields. And often what happens is, if you don't put it in, when you put the turf down, you're not gonna rip the turf back up to put your conduit back in, it's gonna cost too much money. So,
Shouldn't be an issue then.
yeah, I mean, I would say until they replace the turf the next time, right? So, but I can say at this point that, you know, there's no, you know, there's no
Yeah, but
point.
you understand the concern. I understand
Yeah.
what the plans are today.
Right.
In May of 2018.
Right.
But this community in Townsend's gonna be there, you know, long after today, and we'd like to have something laid down there.
Yeah.
Okay?
We can take it back to the president and talk to her about it, and then come back and discuss it with you.
That would be great, thank you.
Katie, and you would include softball in that?
If we were interested in entering into that type of agreement, we could discuss the scope of it.
When all said and done, who makes the final decision when the hammer goes on the table and says, this is what we're gonna do?
In terms of the project as it exists now,
Yes.
that is a decision that happens within the president's office, and it's a budget decision as well, and it also includes the athletic department and servicing their needs.
So your president will interview and discuss with the athletic department, get their opinions, accept them or not accept them, and then make her own decision, I guess, as it is.
It's more of a collaborative effort, and facilities is involved in that as well from a feasibility standpoint. So there's feasibility, there's financial, and there's need. Yes.
Two questions. One is, what should we expect, those of us who live near that space, near the field hockey field, in terms of noise over the summer when the construction's underway, and any disruption? And then my second question is, I went for a walk back there on Sunday, just because it was beautiful outside, and you've got these beautiful tennis courts that are all chained up with the padlock on them, and like everything's chained up, and you've got this community like right next to it, and you know, all fenced in. And I know that with the history of parking issues and all of that, it just strikes me as though we could have a much better relationship. We have a community with tons and tons of kids, and there's all these beautiful unused fields. And has there been any kind of discussion between this association and the university about, you know, collaborating in a way that allows the community to access some of those facilities when they're not being used?
It's interesting. Delegate West, who was just on campus yesterday with us and taking a tour of our athletic facilities, we did discuss the fact that right now, having natural grass on these fields, it's very difficult for us to be able to offer it outside of campus because it's a delicate surface. And so we can rotate through our women's sports needs and our practice fields, but we have to let those grasses rest quite a bit, in fact. And you can see from those overhead pictures how degraded the center of those fields are. That's going to be the benefit of laying an artificial surface on that, is we get 5 times the cycle. And it is possible, and Delegate West actually did bring this up to us yesterday, it is possible that we could discuss the feasibility of utilizing these fields for our community ball teams and things like that. That's something that once we get all these fields in place and we have more facilities, we would be very interested in having the community come.
And then that question about the disruption over the summer from the
Yeah, so, you know, we'll follow all the county ordinances that we follow typically for any construction project. Basically, that's, you know, not starting any work before 7 a.m. And if we are working overtime or over hours, which I don't anticipate with this project, you know, we notify you. Even Saturday and Sunday work, we typically would put out a notification if we thought we were going to need that. But I don't anticipate that with this project. There will be, you know, basically what they'll be doing is they'll be coming in and taking up the surface and then putting down a drainage layer and then building on top of that and building up so the one impact I could see would be dust, you know, as they're doing that. And we can take preventative measures to kind of make sure we have it, you know, kind of wet down as much as we can. This spring it wouldn't be a problem because we had a lot of rain, but yeah, just to make sure that it's, you know, we don't have big dust storms, you know, kind of going, you know, back and forth. The field itself, once we get it done, we'll have an irrigation system under it. And field hockey apparently plays with wet. They wet it down before they play. And I'm not really familiar with all the rules of field hockey. I know it originated like in England where it's a lot rainy, so maybe that's part of the deal. But so that will be going in as well underneath. But we hope to be done, you know, by August. That's what we're shooting for, as soon as we can get out of procurement. So.
So you're anticipating only like a 2-month duration?
Yeah.
And when you were doing the
So
softball,
probably 3, June, July, and August. So
3 months.
3 months, yeah.
When you were doing the softball field, you ran into rock, and so we had the rock things going for about 4 weeks.
Yeah.
The house is shaking and everything. Do you anticipate the rock under this field?
We have a small allowance in the project for rock. It's about a $200,000 allowance. We did some test borings just to see if it was even feasible to do what we need to do, because we need to kind of take the grade down a little bit in order to get the field in. You know, right now we don't anticipate rock, but unfortunately we never anticipate it, and we always find it where we don't. You know, the Baltimore Nice just pops up all over the place. So there may be, if there is, we can probably communicate through Katie's office to let you know that.
In
you know,
advance.
in advance to say, hey, during this week, they'll be doing rock excavation, and most likely between, 'cause it is a little startling when you hear that, or if, I don't anticipate much blasting or anything like that, but just to give you a heads up that it may be coming. But we do have a lot of fill in part of the field, so we're thinking that that's gonna be a little easier to take off. Has anyone been back to Towson Run recently? Behind the athletic fields in that lower area, and seen the work that's been done. So we partnered with the county to basically restore that whole stream. We had a bunch of boulders that we had stored back there that we were using for campus landscaping, but we donated those to the county, and they basically came in and redid that whole stream back there and put in natural ponds and kind of trying to find ways to revitalize that stream, taking care of some erosion issues. They replanted it with trees. And that lower field kind of butts up to that. What we're planning on right now is an underground vault that will kind of capture all the rain that comes up from the pervious surface from the fields, filters it, treats it, and then discharges it into Towson Run. So we have an underground facility planned for the lower fields. And we'll have another facility for the field hockey field underground that will basically capture that drainage is going to all be kind of sloped towards that, and we'll gather that rainfall, treat it for quality. Basically, there are sand filters that kind of treat and take out the particulates, and then discharge it, at a rate that doesn't cause erosion. So, yeah, we're very aware of the stormwater issues on campus. So,
I have one more question about usage. Is field hockey spring or fall sport?
it's fall sport.
Fall sport.
Mhm.
And you said 16 games. Are those 16 home games?
I think it's a total game. So it's probably 8 home games. They may play a preseason game or 2. I don't know if they'll have somebody up, and so I wouldn't anticipate many games more than that. And maybe say 20 total, maybe for the season.
We can get you
And
the.
10.
Practice every day in that field.
Yeah, that'd be a practice facility too. So they would practice and
Okay,
play
so
there.
they will be used 4 or 5 days a week during the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Maybe a little in the summer as well. I mean, before they're getting ready to start. Yeah. Yes.
So kind of piggybacking off of Jerry's, is that it sounds like it's going to be dedicated to field hockey because of the type of turf, and it'll be lined for field hockey?
Yes.
Purely that sport?
That's the intention. Now, whether or not we use it when we have, we host Maryland Special Olympics, and so I could see them using it. There may be other groups that would use it if they, if there was I don't know if there's field hockey in high school or something like that, if they wanted to have a special game, or if there's they could probably use it for that. But the use is really limited to field hockey because nobody else wants to play on that old AstroTurf. It's like putting a really thin carpet on this terrazzo floor, and lacrosse doesn't want to use it because it's just ankle injuries. Football wouldn't want to use it. It's pretty much specifically for field hockey purposes.
Would you
Now,
let rec people use it, like the rec here?
yeah, is there
The middle school,
is there a
high
field
school?
is there a field hockey team? Yeah,
Middle
so
school, then.
that could be something that we could talk. Yeah, hopefully, so one of the things that sometimes comes up is they want to play at the same time that, and so finding the practice times and so forth would be the scheduling issue. But yeah, I think
We're
I
definitely
can't
open
speak
to
for the
that.
university.
Yeah.
Katie's our spokesperson here. So.
And just an add-on question about the press box.
Mhm.
I would presume that plans are being made so that if there's announcers, that the speakers will point away from the homes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rather than, just like a study done to.
Yeah, I think the thing that we want to focus on is making sure that we have the right decibel level at the property line. I mean, so, I don't know how the speakers are going to, if they're going to face towards or away or whatever, but we want to make sure we maintain whatever that decibel level that the county says we need to do at that line.
But like measuring the decibel level at a certain point, we'll get a certain measurement, but it would seem to be common sense to have the sound shooting in a direction that is less impactful
Away.
to the
Away.
homes.
Yeah. So as far as the press box goes, I'm not sure at this point where exactly they're going to site it. the side with the stands would be farther away, and the speakers, although they would be pointed towards it, towards the neighborhood, might be, by the time that sound gets over, less than the bleed out that you would have if it's right on the line or something. So, but we're going to maintain, we're going to work on that decibel level right at the property line to make sure that it doesn't exceed, whatever the county ordinance would be. So,
do you know the average distance on the other NCAA facilities between a field like this and occupied non-university residences?
Every campus is different. I mean, some of them are more urban that have them right on top of, think of the fields down even in Baltimore, Loyola or Hopkins. They're pretty close. Some of them are further away. So.
I'm talking about, like, obviously in the city of Baltimore, everything is a lot closer.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to stick with comparing apples to apples and wondering if other facilities and other settings similar to this, is your proposal going to be about the same as everybody else's or much closer to occupied residences than the rest of them, bringing unique challenges to you?
Yeah.
I don't know that we've looked at that specifically in terms of the proximity issue. I know that one of the overarching goals of this project, both the South Campus fields and the upper field, the field hockey field, is to bring parity to our women's sports. When you look at our competition within our league at other schools, their practice facilities and their play facilities are far beyond where ours are currently for our women's sports. And so the overarching goal was to address that issue of parity for our women's sports. But I can look into the issue of proximity. Again, there may be schools outside of our immediate area that do have as close a proximity as we do. That's something I'd have to look at. I'm not sure how I would assess that, but I can
Well, a lot
certainly.
of it, I think, could just be simply done with Google Map and measuring
Right.
that comes with it. And if there are those that are as close and in a similar situation, you may be able to talk to them and learn from their
Best practices.
Yeah, we did this 3 years ago. We're about as close as you. We didn't anticipate this, but it came up.
Right.
Or, we anticipated and everything worked well. Or you may find that yours is twice as close as the next closest one.
John, we did some research on the softball. We haven't done anything here, but in their league, the softball fields of the other people in their league on average are about 500 feet away from the nearest residential.
And in this case, it's how far?
It's about 100 feet, 110.
Yeah, this one's, our softball is much closer,
Okay.
obviously, yeah. And then the thing about the field hockey, if you look, it's probably about the farthest away on our property line that comes up. So softball is really close to, where Jerry's house is. And then there's that little gap. So field hockey is kind of close. Now tennis is a little closer because it goes further down and there's, development there. So I do know it's about a 17-foot drop from where the playing surface is to the top of the hill, which also will hopefully provide some buffer as well.
All I'm
So,
suggesting is you may have somebody out there that has already
Done it.
encountered
Yeah.
what you may be about to encounter.
Yeah.
And I'm all about learning from somebody
Sure,
else's experience and
absolutely.
mistakes.
I mean, we want to, we want to try to do, our due diligence as well, so.
Spend their tax money.
Right.
Are there any other questions? I have a question from somebody who wrote in, but I don't wanna, are there any other questions from people here? Just one other question about this. Somebody asked if you're gonna be, removing any trees and creating more parking spaces or additional roads.
No. Right now, it looks like we're coming right up to the fence line. There's an existing fence line down at the lower level for field hockey. And for the lower fields, we do have an access road that kind of goes back. It's a gravel road. We don't intend on paving that or anything. So, yeah, I don't see, these are pretty much open field spaces. I think the opportunity for other uses is going to be in those lower fields because they'll have that thicker turf, will be better suited for multiple different sports. Kids play soccer on it. I know my kids play soccer on a similar surface to that. Yeah, so
And there's existing parking at both locations.
we do have 4 stands back there, which these are areas back back in the lower fields that we set aside years ago, basically with DNR, and saying that these are undevelopable areas as far as we're concerned as an institution, that we're going to protect those forested banks that we have. So these projects will not impact the forest banks that we have already set up.
What are the forest banks, that there's an area that you're not gonna develop?
Yeah, so basically, at the lower fields, it's all the areas back near where Towson Run is. That lower piece, we have about 11 acres back there that we set aside in perpetual easement. And then that forest bank kind of curves up around right by our landscape services building. And it kind of comes almost right up to CQ. And so those are areas that we have committed to not build on, going
Yeah.
forward, so.
I grew up in those woods, so.
Oh, do you?
I did.
They'll always be there.
It would kill me if anything happened,
Yeah.
so I'm glad about that.
If you do get a chance, go down and check out that stream that was restored. It's really
Oh,
beautiful.
they did?
It's
Is that what
gorgeous.
they've been doing down there?
Yeah, that's what,
Yes.
all those trucks were kind of coming in and out. We gave them an easement to come through our property to.
I won't get
to-
bought shot by the university?
Nah, you're
Promise.
Okay, cool.
Call
Just
me
don't
if
park
you
anywhere. I'll
have a
give you a ticket.
It'll come out the speaker at 70 decibels.
Thank you
Thank
so
you all.
much. Thank you.
Thank you.